The warning, ignored. The Galactic Empire was old, powerful, and proud. For thousands of years, it had spread across the stars, conquering world after world. Its fleets were vast, its armies countless. No species had ever stood against it for long. To the Empire, the galaxy already belonged to them. But there was one place on their maps that stood out. It was a small corner of space, far from the shining core worlds. A strange warning was written in Imperial records, passed down for centuries. Do not enter Terran space. At first, the rulers of the Empire laughed at it. How could a single planet, one called Earth, dare to make such a demand? They thought it must have been a mistake from the past, a rumor born from fear. Surely no small world could threaten them. Still, the warning remained. No Imperial ship had entered that region in generations. It became a curiosity, a mystery that few spoke about. The Emperor himself, sitting on his throne of stars, finally grew tired of it. "How dare this world deny us?" he said to his council. "The galaxy bows before our fleets, yet here, in this forgotten space, one species claims to stand alone. We shall remind them of their place." The order was given. A great fleet, filled with powerful warships, was sent into Terran space. To the commanders of the Empire, this mission was nothing more than a show of strength. They expected no resistance, no challenge. In their eyes, humans were primitive, weak, and unworthy of attention. The fleet would arrive, the planet would surrender, and the warning would be erased forever. But as the first ships crossed the border, something strange happened. The stars grew quiet. Their long-range scanners flickered and failed. Messages sent back to the Empire cut off in mid-sentence. And then, silence. Entire fleets vanished without a trace. At first, the Empire thought it was a mistake, some natural barrier or a failure of equipment. They sent another fleet, even larger, with stronger weapons and better technology. Once again, silence followed. No wreckage, no survivors, not even a distress signal. The Empire's commanders began to whisper among themselves. Could it be true? Could this small species have done the impossible? Yet pride is stronger than fear. The Empire refused to believe it. They told themselves that humanity was nothing but a shadow, a forgotten race clinging to an old threat. "They hide behind fear," said the admirals. "They cannot stand against us." But the soldiers were not so sure. Stories began to spread across the fleets, tales of Terran ghosts, of ships that moved without light, of weapons that struck from the dark. No one knew where these rumors began, but they spread like wildfire. To the soldiers, Terran space was no longer just a mission, it was a curse. Still, the Emperor pressed on. More ships were sent, more fleets disappeared, and with every loss, the silence grew heavier. Humanity, it seemed, had not been bluffing. Inside Terran space, humans watched from the shadows. They had heard the Empire's laughter, they had seen the fleets crossing their borders, and they had remembered the promise they gave long ago. No one enters Terran space and lives. For centuries, humanity had prepared. They studied alien signals. They mapped every Imperial fleet movement. They built weapons in silence, hidden in their dark skies. While the rest of the galaxy believed Earth was weak, humanity was sharpening its claws. Now, as the Empire pushed deeper, the trap was ready to close. The first battles were not battles at all. They were massacres. Imperial warships, proud and heavy, were torn apart by human strikes that came from nowhere. Energy blasts cut through their shields. Torpedoes struck from the black void. Pilots screamed into their comms before silence claimed them. Alien commanders stared at their screens in disbelief. How could this be? The humans had ships, yes, but far fewer than the Empire. By all logic, they should have been crushed. Yet it was the Empire that was falling apart. Every victory for humanity sent a message across the stars. The warning was real. Terran space is off limits, and still the Empire ignored it. From the throne world, the Emperor roared in anger. "I will not be challenged by savages. Send more fleets, burn their world to ashes." But deep inside, even the Emperor began to feel the weight of fear. The losses were too many. The silence was too strange. Humanity, a species the Empire once dismissed, now stood as the one power that refused to bow. The galaxy watched in silence. Other alien species, long enslaved or conquered, began to whisper among themselves. If humanity could resist the Empire, perhaps they were not alone. The stage was set, the warning had been ignored, and now Terran space was no longer just a forbidden region on a star map. It was the place where the Empire would finally learn the truth. Humanity does not kneel. First contact turns to war. The Empire's arrogance was wounded, but not broken. The loss of 2 fleets in Terran space was whispered about in secret halls and on the lower decks of warships. Admirals tried to explain it away: faulty engines, strange space anomalies, or even mutiny. But the soldiers knew better. Fear had begun to grow in their eyes. To restore order and crush doubt, the Emperor summoned his highest commanders. In the grand chamber of stars, beneath glowing banners of conquest, he gave his command. "Send the Third Imperial Armada. Let it sweep through Terran space. Let Earth see the full might of the Empire. Let the galaxy be reminded of who rules." The Third Armada was larger than most nations' entire fleets. Thousands of ships stretched across the void. War cruisers, destroyers, and carriers bristling with weapons. It was said to be unstoppable, a storm of fire that could erase entire civilizations. When the fleet crossed the border into Terran space, they broadcasted a message to humanity. The Emperor's voice echoed across every channel, cold and cruel. "People of Earth, you were warned. You defy us still. Surrender now, and we may show you mercy. Resist, and your planet will burn." But no reply came. The silence was heavier than any insult. Days passed. The fleet moved deeper. No human ships were seen. No signals were received. The stars themselves seemed quiet, almost watching. The Imperial commanders began to feel it, the same fear that had swallowed the earlier fleets. Yet they pressed forward. They believed their numbers would protect them. Then it began. The first strike came from nowhere. A lone destroyer patrolling near the fleet's edge simply vanished in a flash of fire. Sensors could not track where the shot came from. Alarms screamed through the armada. Soldiers rushed to their stations. Commanders barked orders. But before the fleet could react, more ships exploded. 1, then 3, then 10. Hidden in the dark, human ships revealed themselves, not with bluster, not with pride, but with cold precision. They were smaller than Imperial warships, but faster, sharper, built for ambush. Each strike hit perfectly. Each attack crippled ships that had once been called invincible. The Empire answered with fury. Entire squadrons broke formation and fired into the void. Hundreds of plasma cannons lit the darkness, tearing apart the space around them. Yet they hit nothing. The humans had vanished again. A voice, quiet but clear, finally reached the Imperial comms. It was not the Emperor's booming threats, nor the arrogance of alien commanders. It was human, calm, and steady. "You were warned. Terran space is not yours." That single message broke something inside the fleet. Imperial captains reported strange things, ghost signals on their scanners, shadows of ships that flickered and disappeared, whispers across comms channels. Entire formations began to panic. Some ships fired blindly at the shadows, others turned on their own, convinced humans had infiltrated their systems. The Armada's discipline cracked, and then the humans struck again. This time, they did not vanish after the attack. They pressed forward. Sleek Terran warships built for speed and precision dove straight into the heart of the Armada. Fighters swarmed like knives in the dark, slicing through enemy engines. Battleships targeted the largest Imperial cruisers, hammering them until their hulls split apart. The galaxy had never seen humans fight before. They fought not like conquerors, but like defenders who had no choice but to win. They used every shadow, every trick, every ounce of cunning. Their ships were fewer, but their resolve was stronger. One by one, Imperial commanders realized the truth. Numbers meant nothing here. Pride meant nothing. Terran space was a battlefield built by humanity, and the Empire had walked into a trap. The battle lasted for hours. By the end, the Armada was broken. Hundreds of ships lay in ruins, burning as wrecks across the stars. Survivors fled in panic, their comms filled with desperate cries, and still, humanity sent no reply, no demands, no threats, only silence. When the shattered remnants of the fleet limped back to Imperial space, the galaxy was shaken. For the first time in living memory, the Empire had faced defeat. Whispers spread from world to world. If Earth could stand against the Empire, what else were they hiding? In the throne chamber, the Emperor's rage was endless. His voice shook the walls. "They are nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing. No one defies the Empire." But his words rang hollow. Even he could not deny the truth. 2 fleets had vanished, and now the Third Armada had been shattered. Humanity had fought back and won. The galaxy had seen the beginning of something new. The Empire's rule was no longer unshaken. Fear of humanity had taken root. And in the silence of Terran space, Earth prepared for the next storm, because the Empire would not stop. And neither would humanity. Humanity's secret weapon, the ruins of the Third Imperial Armada, still drifted in Terran space. Wrecked ships floated like broken monuments, their twisted frames silent reminders of what had happened. The Empire, humiliated but still unwilling to admit defeat, swore vengeance. The Emperor demanded answers. How could humans, a single world, defeat fleets that had crushed empires? The galaxy whispered many things. Some believed humanity had found weapons from an ancient race. Others thought Earth was protected by a hidden power, but the truth was something else. Something more terrifying. Humanity's greatest weapon was not a machine. It was preparation. For centuries, while the galaxy looked down on Earth, humans had been watching. Every alien broadcast, every trade route, every starship signal, they had listened. They had studied in silence. They learned alien tactics, alien weaknesses, and alien arrogance. What the Empire did not know was that humanity had been shaping itself for this very moment. Hidden deep in Terran space were stations the Empire never detected. They were not large, but they were clever. Black structures built into asteroids, armed with weapons invisible to Imperial scans. From these stations, humans could strike fleets without warning. But the true secret was not in their machines, it was in their minds. Human commanders fought in ways the Empire could not predict. Where Imperial fleets moved in strict patterns, humans broke rules. Where the Empire relied on numbers, humans relied on surprise. Where alien admirals trusted their pride, humans trusted survival. Every human pilot was trained to fight, as if the battle would decide the fate of their world. And that was the difference. When the next Imperial fleet arrived, they came prepared with jammers, stronger shields, and new orders to crush humanity at all costs. Yet they were still unprepared for the invisible war humans had built. The battle began quietly. Imperial ships advanced, scanning every rock and shadow. They thought they had sealed every weakness. But suddenly, energy blasts erupted from an asteroid that appeared lifeless moments before. Entire squadrons fell in seconds. Human ships did not fight head-on. They slipped in and out of the dark, like predators. They cut supply lines, crippled engines, and then disappeared. A massive Imperial cruiser was brought down not by sheer firepower, but by clever tricks. Human fighters lured it into a field of hidden mines, where it broke apart in a storm of fire. Imperial commanders screamed in anger, but their pride blinded them. They could not see that they were not fighting a normal war. They were fighting a people who had built their entire defense on one rule: make every invader regret stepping into Terran space. Rumors spread among the alien crews. They said the humans had ghosts who haunted the stars, soldiers who could fight even after death. They spoke of human ships that bled fire, weapons that tore holes in space itself. The fear grew with every defeat. Inside Earth's command centers, the humans remained calm. They did not see themselves as heroes. They saw themselves as survivors. For them, this was not conquest. This was survival. One commander, Admiral Reyes, stood before his officers as the Empire's newest fleet burned in the distance. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of humanity's spirit. They came here thinking we were weak. They thought Earth was nothing. But we have something they will never understand. We fight for home, the officers nodded. That was humanity's secret weapon, home. Every battle was fought with the knowledge that behind them were families, cities, children, and the fragile blue planet that had given them life. No empire, no matter how vast, could match the fury of a species defending everything it loved. As more fleets fell, the galaxy began to see the truth. Humanity was not just another world. Humanity was a storm waiting in silence, a fire hidden under the ashes. And now that fire burned for all to see. The Empire's pride shattered again. Their fleets limped home, torn apart by smaller numbers, sharper minds, and an enemy that refused to die. The Emperor raged, but his words no longer carried the same fear. The galaxy had seen something that could not be erased. Humanity was no longer a mystery. Humanity was a warning, and as whispers spread through alien worlds, one phrase carried across the stars: "Do not enter Terran space." The fall of an empire's pride, the Emperor could no longer sit in silence. He had lost fleets, armadas, and the trust of his own commanders. The galaxy, once afraid to whisper against him, now spoke openly of failure. Small nations that had once bowed without question began to murmur of rebellion. The thought was unthinkable, until Earth shattered the illusion of imperial strength. The Emperor called for one last display of power. He ordered the gathering of the greatest fleet the Empire had ever assembled. Not a few hundred ships, not a few thousand, tens of thousands. Every shipyard worked without rest. Every world under imperial rule was forced to send its resources. The armada that rose was so vast that it darkened the stars where it gathered. "This," said the Emperor, his voice echoing through the fleet's channels, "is the storm that will erase humanity from history. No shadows will hide them. No tricks will save them. We will burn their world until no trace of Earth remains." It was called the Pride Fleet, the pride of the Empire, the symbol of its endless power. Entire alien populations were forced to watch as the fleet passed overhead. Endless rows of fire and metal stretching farther than eyes could see. To the galaxy, it seemed as if humanity's fate was sealed. How could one world stand against the strength of 1,000? But in Terran space, there was no fear. On Earth, people watched the skies, silent but unshaken. In command centers buried deep underground, officers studied the fleet's approach with calm focus. Humanity had known this day would come. They had always known the Empire's pride would push it to send everything. And they had prepared. The Pride Fleet entered Terran space with fire and thunder. Its scanners swept every planet, every asteroid, every shadow. The Imperial admirals gave their orders with confidence. They believed humanity's tricks would fail against such numbers, but humanity was not planning to fight with numbers. The first strike came when the fleet reached the heart of Terran space. As the armada moved in tight formation, an enormous pulse swept through their ranks. Imperial ships shook as their systems went dark. Weapons failed, engines sputtered. Panic spread as crews realized entire squadrons had lost power. It was not an accident. Humanity had unleashed a weapon the Empire had never seen, an energy wave designed to blind their systems. For the first time, Imperial ships felt what it was like to be hunted in the dark. Then the real battle began. Human ships, smaller but faster, swarmed like shadows through the chaos. Fighters struck engines, while battleships targeted command ships. Hidden stations, long buried in asteroids, opened fire with weapons powerful enough to tear apart ships 3 times their size. The Pride Fleet fired back with everything it had. The void lit up with plasma fire, beams of energy, and exploding torpedoes. Space itself seemed to burn. But no matter how much they fired, they hit only shadows. Humans did not fight where the Empire expected. They struck, vanished, then struck again. Admiral Varrock, commander of the Pride Fleet, screamed into his comms, "Hold formation! Overwhelm them!" But his orders collapsed as quickly as his ships. The vast fleet was too large to move as one. In trying to crush Earth, they had become a tangled beast, too slow and too proud to adapt. Humanity cut it apart, piece by piece. A massive imperial dreadnought, larger than any human city, became the symbol of the Empire's arrogance. It advanced toward Earth, its weapons locked on the blue planet. It never reached firing range. Human ships swarmed its engines, tearing them open. The dreadnought fell, burning, crashing into the black like a dying star. Its wreckage lit the skies above Earth as millions watched. The fall of the dreadnought broke the fleet's spirit. Imperial captains hesitated. Some ordered retreat. Others turned their guns on their own, desperate to silence the voices of panic. The fleet that had once been called unstoppable now crumbled before the will of a single world. By the battle's end, Terran space was littered with wreckage. Thousands of Imperial ships had been destroyed. Survivors fled in terror, their channels filled with cries of disbelief. On Earth there was no celebration. Humanity did not cheer. They only watched the fires fade and remembered the promise they had made. No one enters Terran space and survives. The galaxy shook. News spread faster than light. The Empire, once untouchable, had been broken in front of everyone. Worlds long enslaved whispered of rebellion. Some openly declared that if Earth could fight the Empire, so could they. In his throne room, the Emperor sat in silence. The Pride Fleet, his greatest creation, had been destroyed. His pride had turned to ashes. He had thought humanity weak, but now he understood too late. Earth was not a world to conquer. It was a world to fear, and across the stars the legend grew. The humans had defeated the might of the galaxy, not with numbers, but with will. The fall of the Empire's pride was not just a battle. It was the beginning of change. Humanity's final message. The battlefield of Terran space was silent now. Where once the Empire's Pride Fleet had stretched across the stars, only wreckage remained. Broken warships drifted without power, their lights gone, their hulls torn apart. Thousands of lives had been lost, and the once unstoppable machine of the Empire had been shattered. On Earth, the people did not cheer. They stood in silence, watching the sky. Families gathered together, children held by parents, cities lit by the glow of distant burning ships. Humanity had defended its home, but there was no joy in the victory, only the cold truth that survival had demanded everything. Inside Earth's command center, Admiral Reyes stood with his officers. His face was stern, his eyes heavy with the weight of what they had done. Around him, screens showed the aftermath. The scattered survivors of the Empire fleeing into the void. "They will come again," one officer said softly. Reyes nodded. "Yes, the Empire does not stop, but neither do we." The galaxy was already watching. Across alien worlds, broadcasts spread the news of the Empire's defeat. Species that had been slaves for generations whispered in the dark, their voices trembling with new hope. For the first time, they dared to believe the Empire could fall. The Emperor, far away on his throne world, sat in silence. His once great Pride Fleet was gone. His advisors spoke nervously, afraid to look him in the eye. They begged him to rally his power, to rebuild, to strike again. But deep in his heart, the Emperor felt something he had not felt in centuries: fear. Humanity had shown him something he could not control, and then the humans sent their message. It was not spoken with arrogance. It was not filled with threats or demands. It was simple, calm, and clear. A human voice carried across the stars, broadcast on every open channel the Empire used. "This is Earth. You were warned. Terran space is sacred. It belongs to no one but humanity. You crossed the line. You will not cross it again." There was silence after the message. No further words. No challenge. Only the heavy reminder of what had just happened. The galaxy held its breath. The message was replayed across alien networks, whispered in the shadows of conquered worlds, repeated by voices that had long been silenced. Humanity's warning became more than just a command. It became a legend. Some alien leaders wondered if humanity would rise beyond their borders, if Earth would strike at the Empire directly and bring it to its knees. But humans made no move to conquer. Their fleets remained in their skies. Their weapons stayed hidden in their shadows. Humanity wanted nothing but to protect its home, and that made them even more terrifying. For the Empire, defeat on the battlefield was one thing, but defeat without conquest, defeat without Earth demanding control, was worse. It meant humanity had no hunger for empire, no greed for more. It meant their strength came from something purer, something impossible to break. Across the galaxy, whispers grew louder. Rebellions began to spark. The fear of the Empire weakened with every passing day. And in every whisper one truth was repeated: the humans defeated the Pride Fleet. On Earth, life slowly returned to rhythm. Children went back to schools, factories rebuilt what had been lost, and soldiers returned to their families. Yet the shadow of war lingered. Humanity knew the Empire would not forgive, would not forget. The warning had been given, but pride does not die easily. In the dark sky above, the wreckage of alien ships still drifted. Some pieces would orbit Earth for years, silent reminders of the day the Empire was humbled. Admiral Reyes stood once more in the command center, looking at the glowing blue planet below. One of his officers asked, "What happens now, Admiral?" Reyes answered with steady words, "Now we wait, and when they come again we remind them. Humanity will not kneel, not now, not ever." The words were carried in reports, in memories, in quiet voices that spread across the stars. They became the final truth of the war. The Empire ignored the warning. Humanity defended its space, and the galaxy will never forget it. Far beyond Terran borders, where the Empire still held power, alien slaves looked to the sky with new hope. Children whispered the name of Earth as if it were a shield. And even the Emperor, locked in his silent throne room, could not shake the image of his great fleet burning in Terran space. The message of humanity was not just for the Empire. It was for the galaxy: do not cross into Terran space. Do not test the will of Earth. For humanity had shown that no matter the odds, no matter the enemy, they would rise together, and they would fight until the last star burned out. And so the legend was written. The humans had stood against the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known, and won.